Send it in.
And welcome back, everybody. It is so good to be back as we get ready. We are less than 24 hours away. Actually, we're a full 24 hours away and then some for the season opener between the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins. Oh my gosh, it feels so good to say that. I'm Jake Gibson. That's my friend and co-host Alex Krutchik. And Alex, it's been a long off season. I think Kachuk spoke about this in the documentary. It's been long. There's been lots of parties. There's been lots of drinking. There's been lots of celebrations. There will not be a ring ceremony, but they're still going to get their rings anyway, and they look cool. What has this offseason been like for you celebrating? And when did you, and just like when they asked Kachuk, when did the mindset begin that, all right, it's back to hockey time?
You know what's funny? Like as soon as let me make sure I have my timeline correct. They had the parade and then free agency opened. I think once guys started signing extensions and the Panthers started signing up some of the fourth line guys and some of the depth defensemen, I think that's when I started thinking about this year. It was a pretty quick turnaround. And like you said, like it was a long off season in terms of things that were done. It was jam-packed with lots of activities, so it felt long, but really it was short. It was actually the shortest offseason in Panthers history. The second shortest was, if we're excluding the COVID years, the second shortest was last year when they got to 5 games against the Vegas Golden Knights. This year they go to 7. We barely had any time before free agency started.
Yeah. So now here we are. I mean, by the way, they expand on what I said earlier, the Florida Panthers were not able to have their ring ceremony tonight. They're refunding the $20 that everyone had to pay, but they did showcase the ring. It looks very cool. Let me pull it up here. They made a trailer for it because of course they did. Let me share my screen real quick because I think this is important. You know, this is something who knows how long it's going to take until it happens again. I say it could happen immediately. Let's take a quick look at the ring. All right. Well, you get the gist of it. Amazing looking ring. Alex, what does the freedom thing inside mean? I know Paul Maurice said something about freedom in the championship parade speech, but what does that mean?
That's a good question because the Panthers put out a press release.
Okay.
About everything in the ring except for that. I don't know exactly what it means other than just as a nod to what Paul Maurice said. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't quite remember what he even meant by that, other than just, and I could be totally wrong here, just the weight off of his shoulders of being in the game for so long and not winning a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That's all I got. But I do know it's 14 karat gold. Ooh. I know there's, how much is there? There's over 100 diamonds on it. It's 187 diamonds. The ring itself is shaped in the Florida Panthers shield.
Yeah. Does it open?
What is that?
I
don't think it opens.
Up?
Not that I know of. Also on the inside of it, there's an inscription of each series that they played last year. It's reminiscent of the rally towel that they gave out last year.
Of course.
I'm trying to think what else. Oh, there's a rat on the inside of it because there had to be a rat.
Of course.
There had to be a rat. And then all the guys with titles got titles. So, for example, Alexander Barkov, it says captain on his ring. You saw it there in the promo video. Yeah. All the alternate captains. I could be wrong, but I think the goalies, I think Bobrovsky has a goalie title.
Mm-hmm.
Could be wrong. But yeah, it's a really cool ring. It did not disappoint. One of the cool things about it was that apparently the players didn't get a preview of it. Like, the original plan was to do it in front of the fans tonight,
Yeah.
And the players were going to see it for the first time with the fans. Like we were all going to see it at the same time together. Would have been a cool moment. I think it's unique. I don't think other teams do that where they reveal the rings in front of all the fans in a ceremony.
Yeah.
But it would have been very cool. Yeah, the players were super excited for it. Sam Bennett smiled.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool to see. Um, yeah, it was a really cool ring. I'm glad it lived up to the hype because after, I mean, personally, I'm 27, so after 27 years of not seeing a Stanley Cup, you want that ring to really look good, and it did. Like the wait was worth it. That thing looks beautiful.
Yeah, and hey, Panthers, if you're watching, I think you have our addresses. If you could send that in the mail real quick, I appreciate my own. I think Alex, I think you'd appreciate the same. Let me clarify something. Obviously, the ring ceremony was canceled tonight due to the upcoming hurricane that's moseying its way to Florida. It looks like it's expected to make landfall either late Tuesday or early Wednesday. Regardless, it feels like the majority of Dade County and Broward is going to be safe and is not going to receive the shoulder of the hurricane. But if you're in the west part of Florida, either Fort Myers, Tampa, like some of the zones that could get drastically affected by the hurricane, make sure you're safe. Make sure you have the essential supplies because you're kind of running out of time if you don't have it already. But just make sure you're safe. Okay, I mean, hopefully the Panthers. Are monitoring the game, are monitoring this hurricane and checking if tomorrow night does work for their opener against Boston. Hopefully it does, because assuming that the weather is going to be good enough that I hope they can get it in, because the moment they drop that banner, I'm sorry, they raise that banner, I should say, it's going to be a beautiful feeling, Alex. I've been waiting so long to see a banner raised in that arena, and you know what fueled the fire for me? I got to go to the Super Bowl in Vegas, right? That's a whole completely different story. The day after the Super Bowl, my dad and I got to go to a Vegas Golden Knights game because we were still in town and they were playing. So why not check it out? We got some pretty good tickets, and we get to see a pretty fun game. Minnesota beat Vegas that night, but I kept looking up at the rafters, and I saw a championship banner of their win in the Stanley Cup Finals prior over Florida, and I kept thinking that could have been us. That could have been our banner that we could have raised and that we could have been celebrating this season. But we had to work through it, and now it's all come to fruition as now we have an opportunity to see them raise the banner. And it's going to be a tough challenge because I don't know, Alex, if you saw how Vegas raised the banner last season. They came out of a slot machine, and it came out of a slot machine that I believe Mark Stone pulled the lever on, and then it was really cool. I guess you had to be there and witness it. But Alex, what are personally speaking, what are the emotions going to be for you the moment you see that banner raised?
I think so. Part of it is that I've been lucky to have had the Panthers play in the same arena my entire life, so I specifically remember all of the bad games and all of the bad years of sitting in those same exact seats in that same exact building. Like, it's not like the Panthers moved to a new arena and they suddenly became good. Like, no, they played some really bad hockey in that arena.
Yeah.
And it looks largely unchanged from those years. I mean, they renovated it. It looks like a nicer version, but it's still the same arena. I think it'll hit me when I look around that same arena that I watched such terrible hockey in and realize, like, we've come so far, like, as a hockey market, because it's going to be sold out. People are going to be really, really excited. ESPN is going to be there. The press box is going to be full, and they're going to raise a banner in the same stadium that struggled to pull 10,000 people a game just like 10, 15 years ago. So I think just looking around and seeing how far this market has come.
It's fun to reminisce on last year's championship, and now Florida has a very simple job. It's to go and win it again. And easier said than done. That doesn't happen very often in the NHL. I believe the last team to do it was our neighbors up north in Tampa, not that long ago. I guess it actually hasn't been that long since it's happened. But if you look back prior to that Tampa back-to-back, then it gets a little tough. Who would be after that? Would it be Pittsburgh? I think it would be Pittsburgh. But
yeah, it would be Pittsburgh back in the mid-2010s. It's hard because not only now are you asking them to win 2 in a row, you're asking them to go back 3 in a row. Because remember, like we mentioned, and how everyone knows who's listening to this podcast, they went to the Stanley Cup already 2 years ago against the Golden Knights. So now you're asking them to play, I'm trying to do math, 8-9 more months of hockey again.
Yeah.
And, man, that's a tough ask. I will say this is a very in-shape team. Every NHL team is.
Yeah.
But it's pretty well known that Paul Maurice's training camps and practices are notoriously tough.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some of the most fit guys in the league. Now, you can say the same, but a lot of other teams will claim the same thing, of course, so I'll give that disclaimer. But I do think the Panthers are built for it. But again, it's hockey. It's weird. Even the Rangers series last year, the Panthers played better than them, but they didn't exactly dominate, which you're not expecting to when you reach that stage of the playoffs. All teams are pretty good once you get there. But the Panthers were only one goal better in every game. Was it every game they only won by one?
Let me double check just because I have their schedule pulled up. But yeah,
while you check that, that's what I mean is like it's hard to do from a physical standpoint, and it's hard to do just in a luck standpoint. Like the Panthers were one goal away. I guess they were two combined.
Right. Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt, Alex, but I do have it here. Game 1 was a 3-0 shutout for Florida.
Okay.
Every win after that was 3-2 in overtime, 3-2 again, and then 2-1 to cap off the series.
Yeah, it was a very close series, and you're going to play close series again this year. Boston looks like they'll be good again. They got Swayman back. They lost Allmark, but they still have Swayman. You got a lot of good teams still here. Not a lot of teams got worse. Not a lot of teams got better. Like I don't think a whole lot of teams got a whole lot better.
True.
But they didn't get worse. And the reality is, other than Tampa, like the Bruins, even though the Panthers played better than the Bruins, it wasn't such a large margin that the Bruins can't fill that margin this year.
Yeah.
I still think the Panthers are the favorite in the East, but like it's going to be challenging, of course.
Looking at the odds, current odds, I guess futures bet to win the Stanley Cup this season. Edmonton's the favorite, which I'm going to be upfront with you. I'm not surprised. They're now in a situation like Florida was last year, where now they're mad. They have the eye to the tiger and they want to win this thing. Florida has the second best odds. Dallas is up there at the third. New Jersey is in the fourth. That's a little wow. New Jersey has climbed their way there. Then you have some teams that make a lot of sense, like Carolina, Toronto, New York, Colorado. They're all up there. Boston's a little bit lower than I would have presumed. I don't know if this is updated since they just signed Swayman to that extension, so I'm not sure about that. But yeah, some of the teams that you expect to be up there, they are up there. And Florida's at the 2 spot. Edmonton's at the 1, which I'm going to say right now. I think we'll do a playoff predictions thing at the end here, Alex. But I'm going to say that Edmonton being the favorite is fair. And Florida being at the 2 spot is also fair. Because like you had mentioned, not a whole lot of teams got better. Florida did lose a lot of players, but I think they did sign some solid talent as well. So, yeah, that's that. Let's get into some roster talk, Alex.
They dropped the roster.
They just this second?
Like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, all right. On
all socials, I've got the list right here.
Let me pull that right up now. All right. Oh, did they post it on socials? Because it's still just all about the rings.
No, I've got it in my email.
Okay, all right.
But yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, before we get into their current roster, I do want to ask you real quick about some of the players they lost and how they're really going to affect this team. Ryan Lomberg, Brandon Montour are 2 key pieces of this Panthers team that have been there for a while that I feel like Florida is going to miss drastically. You have players like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Vladimir Tarasenko, Stolars, who I don't think contributed near as much, but they still put in solid work in the postseason. Maybe not Stolars. I believe the only game he played was in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup. But Tarasenko and Ekman-Larsson, they're going to be tough losses, but I think Florida can deal with that. Okposo as well. He retired. Congratulations to him. He went out a champion, I think you can only aspire to be that as a professional sports player, getting the option to retire as a champion. So I wanted to ask you, the defense for Florida took a hit with that, and the forwards as well. Who, if you had to pick three players out of that bunch that you feel like are going to impact this Florida team the most as far as players we've lost, who would you say?
Yeah, I'm really gonna miss Ryan Lomberg. I really liked what he brought. That fourth line, once in a while he would give you some offense, but he always gave you energy. He gave you good defense. Uh, he gave you just stifling defense on the offensive side. He was a
Mm-hmm.
pest. He was the exact kind of player that I would love to have on a fourth line in the playoffs, and also just the personality. I just felt like he brought the locker room together. There was a few guys that left that brought the locker room together. There's still plenty of guys that remain that are great locker room guys. But losing Ryan Lomberg is one of those things where you're going to have to fill that hole a little bit in the locker room.
Can you share your screen, by the way, Alex? If you have that roster in front of you right now, can you present that, por favor?
It's on my computer, and you're on my phone right now. But I can list it off for you.
Okay, go for it.
So obviously, I'll start with the forwards. It's all the guys that you would expect: Verhaeghe, Barkov, Kachuk, Rodriguez, Bennett, Reinhardt, Lusterine, and Lundell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as expected, but still not a complete and total lock, although pretty much was. Mackie Samoskevich is going to play on that third line with Lusterine and Lundell. And then the fourth line looks like it'll be Jonah Gadjevich, Jesper Boquist, and AJ Greer. And
Okay.
then Mackenzie Entwistle, the signee from Chicago over the
Mm-hmm.
summer, looks like he's going to be the extra forward. And then defensemen, of course, the guys that we knew would be here: Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, Nico Mikkola, Dmitry Kulikov, and then Adam Boquist. Uvis Balinskis is going to round out the defensive pairings, and then Nate
Mm-hmm.
Schmidt is going to be the extra guy.
Okay.
Um, and then the surprise for me was that Spencer Knight is getting sent down to the AHL. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
start the season in Charlotte. Chris Drieger is going to come up and be behind Sergei Bobrovsky. And I was a little bit surprised. I was a little bit surprised just because Knight had such a good preseason, and he
Yeah.
ended the preseason by backing up Bob in Sunrise when they were playing Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a largely NHL roster that they were putting out, the Panthers. And then the next game, instead of going to Drieger, Paul Maurice had Knight go again. He had Knight go all 60 minutes, and he looked pretty good. But yeah, there are some reasons for it. Spencer Knight doesn't have to go through waivers in order to go down to Charlotte. And if you're trying to stay below the 23-man mark, you would rather do that than put a guy like, who am I thinking of right now? Patrick Giles. Or sorry, no, Patrick Giles doesn't have to go through waivers either.
Right.
Putting a guy down that needs to go through waivers, you don't want to have to do that. And I guess the Panthers didn't want to carry three goaltenders, which I understand, because then you're just having one guy watch from the press box every game, and you're not going to stay sharp if you're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this, Alex. In your own opinion, what would be your preferred first line for Florida as soon as the puck drops on Tuesday night?
I would keep it the exact. I would keep the top two lines the exact same as they were last year, which is Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhardt, and then Rodriguez, Bennett, Kachuk. And then as for the third line, Lusterine and Lundell, Samoskevich. Like, I think that's the perfect top three line. And then the fourth line of Gadjevich, Greer, Boquist. Boquist is a winger.
Mm-hmm.
Jesper Boquist. There's two brothers on this team. But what was it? The October 2nd preseason game, Paul Maurice had him at center.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Boquist is going to do really well there. I'm glad that Greer made the team. Patrick Giles was a guy,
Mm-hmm.
very, very young. Had a very good preseason with the Panthers. I kind of was thinking that he was going to make the team. Just the writing was on the wall there with that, but I guess I don't think it's that they didn't think it was good enough. I think it's just, a roster number type situation.
And in the net, you have Bobby. So who is expected to be Barkov or Bobrovsky's backup at this point?
Chris Driedger.
Chris Driedger. You already mentioned it, but I'm kind of shocked that Knight didn't get the nod. But he's been dealing with a lot, and hopefully he continues to improve as the season goes on, and maybe we can see him back at the Amerant Bank Arena at some point. But okay, Driedger getting the nod overnight, and obviously you have Bobby at the net. So
yeah, and as for Giles, he's another guy who doesn't have to go through waivers.
mm-hmm.
So if you're going to send someone down, like it's kind of you just don't want to lose a guy by sending him down. They really like Giles a lot, but he doesn't have to go through waivers, so it was very easy to send him down. They knew that they weren't going to lose him, and I suppose that's the same thing with Knight.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the additions that we got here for the Florida Panthers. I think a few of them that kind of point out the most is obviously defenseman Nate Schmidt. You have the Bachvist brothers and both Jesper and Adam. You have Thomas Nosek, AJ Greer. Alex, who do you think are some of the additions that Florida got in the offseason that will provide the most immediate punch for this Panthers roster? I'm assuming Nate Schmidt is going to be high up there.
I do like Nate Schmidt, but I think Adam Boquist is really going to be the guy who provides the most impact out of all of the newcomers.
Okay.
He's the guy who's struggled staying healthy. But if he can stay healthy, I think he has a lot of production in him. And the reason that I think he's going to pack the most punch is because of the roles that he's already being given. He's going to quarterback the power play. I believe he's going to quarterback the first power play unit with Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhardt, and Kachuk. So being given the keys to that after Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour walked in free agency, I think that's huge. I think being given the minutes there and being given the keys to the first power play unit is going to be huge for him. He's an offensive defenseman, which of course the Panthers, similar to the reason that I think it's great that he's quarterbacking the power play, they lost that in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour. So it's great that you have a guy who can play defense, but he's also going to provide some offense for you.
All righty. Now it's time to get in the philosophical portion of the show as we start to look at the NHL just in general, right? You mentioned it earlier. Not a whole lot of teams got significantly better. There were some teams that got some big name players in the offseason that now they have higher expectations. The championship tax is a real thing, Alex, but I don't think all things considered Florida got too hosed by that tax this offseason. So they're still in the thick of it. Let's go by conferences. Who do you think in the Eastern Conference will be the biggest foe for Florida come the playoff time? Come the playoffs, who do you think will be the biggest rival to Florida's success in the Eastern Conference and getting back to the finals for a third straight year?
I still think it'll be the Rangers.
Fair.
To my knowledge, they didn't lose anybody.
No.
And they were a thorn in the side last year. What was I going to say? The goaltending that they have is so hard to beat, and there were times last year where I really didn't think the Panthers were going to score at times. Like I knew that they would score, but I didn't think they were going to get the requisite amount to win a game. And as long as the Rangers still have that, I think they're going to be hard to beat.
And now let's move on to the West, because I think the West is where it gets a little bit tricky. Because like I had mentioned earlier, I think Edmonton is still the clear favorite to return to the Stanley Cup. It used to be difficult for teams to return back to the Stanley Cup after a loss, but Florida did it with no sweat, and now Edmonton has a really great opportunity. But you still have some very tough teams in that conference, such as Dallas, who again retained a lot of their players. Colorado went through a few players lost, but they did add some nice players as well. And you even have a team like Nashville who could shock some people in the West. You bring in Stamkos, that power play is probably going to look exceptional for the Predators now. Who in the Western Conference do you expect to be the biggest threat for Florida if, and this is a big if they make it to the final?
Yeah, I really like what I saw from the Predators last year during the regular season. They also
Mm-hmm.
brought back their goaltender in UC Saros. I think he was tremendous last year. I think that they led by Andrew Burnett, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they need to play better playoff style hockey, which I think that they will with a second year of Andrew Burnett. Um, I really like their goaltending. I really like their offense, and I I still think it's Edmonton, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that Nashville has the biggest shot of knocking them off.
I love it. I mean, I wouldn't be mad seeing Nashville steal the spotlight and grab that spot in the conference final. But no, I think Edmonton has a lot to prove because McDavid already had an amazing season last year. Now they expect even more from him to lead this team back to the Stanley Cup final. And you know what? He's got the skill set to do that. I am a big believer in that. So who would you say are some of the bottom tier teams in the NHL last season that you feel could definitely turn heads in the NHL spotlight and maybe grab a playoff spot and even go from there?
That's a good question. So not necessarily a team, but I'm just really excited to see what Macklin Celebrini can do
Hmm.
with the Sharks. Super excited to see what Connor Bedard can do with the Blackhawks now. In his second year, he already looked tremendous as a rookie last year. Um, but I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams that are really like so improved that they're going to go from bottom feeders to playoff teams.
Hmm.
I do think that the Blackhawks goaltending got slightly better. They've got Peter Mrazek up there. I think he's fine. I think he's okay. Um, yeah, yeah. Just excited to see what the rookies can continue doing.
I'm looking at the power rankings here put out by ESPN. These are always kind of interesting to look at. The their projected worst team in the NHL is going to be the San Jose Sharks, which I mean they brought in some nice talent like Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. Those guys can make an impact for them, but definitely doesn't feel like they've rebuilt as well as they could have this offseason. I know it's tough to do that in just one season. Obviously, at 31, you have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who obviously had a tragic offseason with the loss of Gaudreau, which I mean obviously is a terrible thing, but he was a great player, and Columbus is going to be feeling that effect this offseason not having him there. At 30, you have Anaheim. By the way, Alex, I love those Anaheim sweaters. They look so good. It's like the
They're great. I
return to
love
the
the orange.
classic duck. Oh, it's good. They took the OG Mighty Ducks look and just I think made it better. Chicago's at the 29, Montreal's at the 28. Looking at the top five, I did want to check this just to make sure that we're all sort of lined up here. At the 5 is Colorado. Okay, now I'm not too shocked. I think they're still a great team. They've been consistently one of the better teams out in the West. New York is at the 4. You had mentioned they have a list of key players added and lost. They added Sam Carrick and Riley Smith. They got rid of Barclay Goodrow and Alex Winberg, and that's it for New York. That's it. They're pretty much going to be almost a carbon copy of what you saw last season. At 3 is Dallas. They actually changed a lot as far as players added and lost, but I think it's all going to be for the better. And I mean, they were only a couple wins away from making it to the Stanley Cup final, so they put themselves in a great spot to repeat. Florida's at the 2, and Edmonton obviously is going to be at the 1. Not much really to say. Most of the players they've lost have been, not really some of the bigger players on the team. I mean, they did add Jeff Skinner as well. He could make an impact for them immediately for the Oilers. So there you go.
Yeah.
So Alex, let's. I meant to make a new CAT scan graphic, if you can believe it, but I don't have it here. But let's do a special version. Pretend there's a CAT scan thing popping up right now. But let's do a special prediction CAT scan. Who do you think is going to be the MVP, the most valuable player for Florida this season? Last year, who would you say was the MVP for last year? Would it be Reinhart with the amount of goals he scored? Would it be Barkov for his defense play and just ability to lead the team? Would it be Bobrovsky for making plays behind the net in the postseason? This is accounting towards regular and postseason. Who would you say was the MVP of Florida last year?
I still think it was Reinhardt just because of his knack for scoring goals when it mattered most. Maybe I'm making that final goal in the Stanley Cup Game 7 too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm leaning too heavy on that goal, but just his penchant for goal scoring while also playing good defense. Like Paul Maurice was the one who kept banging the drum on how good he was at defense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it wasn't really talked about much, but he played great defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that it was him. I would almost always say that it's Barkov as well, just because of everything that he provides, both tangibly and intangibly.
I would agree Reinhardt as well for pretty much all the reasons you just dropped. It's poetic. Reinhardt scored the first goal of the season, and he scored the last. Wow. Mind blown. So now it gets into this year's question. Who do you think is going to be the MVP of this team in 2024? I'll start this off first because why the hell not? I'm going to go with Matthew Tkachuk. I think he has entered superstar fandom. He has proven himself to be one of the best assists Florida has, not even just for goals scored, but his ability to assist and just get total points. I think he's the ultimate package, and I think he's going to have some record-breaking, some personal best games this season. I think overall he's going to break his career highs, his season highs in both goals and assists. He has a lot to prove, and I think he's getting better as the years go by. And thank God we have him for as long a contract as we do. But he's still getting better, I think. So that's why I think Tkachuk is going to have a breakout year.
Yeah, my pick is going to be Gustav Forsling for a defensive
great
unit.
Pick.
Yeah, for a defensive unit that they didn't lose, like they didn't lose a ton, but they still lost guys. They still lost Montour and Ekman Larson. And I think that there's going to have to be some there's going to have to be some shouldering to that burden.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, a lot of that will have to come from the depth defense because Forsling was already the best defenseman last year. Ekman Larson and Montour were kind of second tier or maybe bottom of the first tier. But I still think the Forsling is going to step up and continue to be as good on defense this year as it was last year.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so let's talk about this game tomorrow. Assuming this is going to get in, I mean, if they canceled this ring ceremony due to an abundance of weather, even though today's relatively calm, I don't know what they're going to do. What they're going to do for the game on Tuesday night? You're pretty much Tuesday night is when the hurricane's going to get as close as it does to the shores of Florida without exactly being there. I mean, there's going to be lots of rain. There's going to be lots of wind. I think a couple years ago they played during a hurricane or even a tropical storm against Carolina. That was kind of funny. So let's talk about our opponent, Boston. They added Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zakharov, and Jonas. I want to attempt to enunciate that last name, but they did lose some big players. Linus Ullmark is gone. DeBrusk is gone. Bachvist is gone, and now he's with us. And I was gonna say Swayman was probably going to be gone, but no, they signed an 8-year deal with him. So that's he's going to be I'm assuming is going to be starting at net for the Panthers. So talk a bit about what you're going to see from Boston and compared to what you've seen from last season.
Yeah, so I'll start with the goaltending. Joonas Korpisalo is going to start in net tomorrow as of this morning. That's what Coach Jim Montgomery said for the Bruins. Korpisalo is seasoned. He was with Ottawa last year, gave up 3.27 goals a game, 89% save percentage. He's it was also one of his worst years, though, because his last couple seasons before that were 92%, 91% save percentage in smaller doses, though. Last year was actually his biggest workload, so I guess you can say that was also the biggest sample size. Just because the Swayman contract didn't get signed until, was it yesterday or the day before?
I think yesterday afternoon.
So Swayman is probably not ready unless something changes. But as of yesterday, we were told Korpisalo will start, and that was after the Swayman news came out that he was re-signing.
Yeah.
So the Panthers have an opportunity to put up some goals tomorrow. He's still a solid goalie, but he's obviously no Swayman. So just from that perspective, remember last year, the Bruins put up a fight, but really it was the Panthers versus Swayman.
True.
That was really the guy. So I think tomorrow, even though the team itself will be very similar, the main crux that the Panthers had to deal with last year won't be out there.
Yeah.
So I like their chances for tomorrow. Now, when the playoffs come around again, of course, it'll be a challenge, but for tomorrow, I like the Panthers' chances.
Even being the start of the regular season, I don't think there's going to be any love lost or any hate lost between these two teams. I think it's going to be just as physical and as demanding to the body as it was in the postseason. I wouldn't be mad if one team gets up by a bunch of goals and there's going to be maybe some fists thrown or some pushing and shoving. It's going to be that way. That's just what it typically is between these two teams, and I love it for that. So I don't know about you. I think this is the perfect matchup to begin the season for the Panthers.
It's a fun matchup, and to raise the banner against those guys will be fun.
Yeah. So let's start to close up shop here. Let's do some predictions. Let's predict all the games on opening day tomorrow. There's actually 3, and Florida's surprisingly not the first, which is a bit interesting. The first matchup of the day is going to be St. Louis at Seattle. That's at 4:30 p.m. All these games are on ESPN. Who you got, Alex?
I've got I've got St. Louis in that one.
I'll take Seattle because they're the home team. I feel like most of the home teams are going to look pretty good today or tomorrow. Boston at Florida. I mean, come on, man. It's the Panthers have so much riding on this game. Obviously, you want to look good. National TV is going to be there. You're going to see your banner. But Boston's going to play with a lot of energy, and they're going to play with maybe even a bit of jealousy, which could work to their advantage. I'm going to say Florida wins, but it's going to not be a blowout. It's going to come down to a one-score game. If I had to give you a score, I'd say it's Florida 4, Boston. Actually, I'm not going to say it's a one-score. I'm going to say Florida 4, Boston 2.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think 4 goals is a good amount for tomorrow. If the Panthers score 4 goals tomorrow, I'll be pretty happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say probably 4-1. 4-1. I actually no. You know what? Now that I'm talking myself through it, 4-2. This is a relatively new defensive unit, relatively new defensive pairings. The roster itself is pretty much the same, but because some guys are playing with guys that they're not used to, it takes some time to come online in that regard.
And at 10 o'clock, you have the Chicago Blackhawks taking on Utah, the brand new team, the Utah Hockey Club. By the way, I think it's at this point one of the worst kept secrets, but it seems like it's their actual name is going to be the Yeti. So I kind of want to refer to them as the Utah Yeti because that just rolls off the tongue. But anyway, Utah gets to open the season against Chicago. But I get they have a new stadium. They have very fair, I don't know if you saw this, Alex, very fair prices for food and drinks there, which is cool to see. I wish they kind of made that, nationwide. But Utah can't hide the fact that they are just the Arizona Coyotes, but a bit further north. I'm actually going to take Chicago in a road upset here.
Interesting. I'm going to take Utah just because I feel like they'll have energy from the crowd. You have to remember that, Utah isn't a expansion team. They are still the Arizona Coyotes roster. Of course, with some additions and deletions, just like every team over the offseason, but they're still the Coyotes roster, which wasn't great to begin with last year.
It wasn't, no.
But also not an expansion team. And you have to remember that the Blackhawks are still bad. They're still a bad hockey team. So I'm going to go with Utah tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Alrighty. Oh, did Kevin ask something? Oh no. I want to get Alex's take on what the FIU defense needs to do to stop Caden Salter and the Flames running game. Also, we can talk about their defensive line, which is full of returners. Well, I'm not going to stop you, Alex.
Yeah, so basically what FIU needs to do.
Huh?
And then they'll win the game.
Okay. I think I understood that completely. So
that's all they have to do.
I will say this is some bad timing to have FIU's game against Liberty and the Panthers not only on the same date at the same time. I'm gonna have to have back-to-back screens here for me, but no. Alex, just what are the vibes right now? We're at this point we're 24 hours away from watching. Actually, less than 24 hours away from watching the new season. You're going to be there checking out the banner. Just what are the vibes right now?
Oh, the vibes are excited. It's like the first day of school. except a lot more exciting. So I guess it's not like the first day of school at all, now that I think about it. It's like the first day of hockey season, which is so much nicer.
All righty. We'll leave you there. I'm Jake. That's Alex. Have a great rest of the night. Stay safe. If you're in an area in Florida that could be impacted by this hurricane, if you're not, watch some Panthers hockey. It's going to be on ESPN, nationally televised game. Make sure whatever streaming service or cable you have WSFL ready, because that's going to be the new home of the Florida Panthers this upcoming season. But obviously, you have Steve Goldstein, Randy Mueller, Kate Engelson, Blaylock. They're all going to be there. Just a new platform, but still, hockey's back. That's a great feeling, and I think hockey in this city has never been better. So, have a great rest of the night. Go watch some hockey, and let's go home, baby.
Send it in.